So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio.
Hello, and welcome to Trending. My name is Brooke Taylor, in for Timmery again. In your prayers, please remember Timmery's mom. She is sick, so Timmery is with the family. And if you could just remember to tuck them in your intentions, I know they'd be very grateful for those graces. So today, big news and a busy show lined up today. We're going to try to fit everything in. Journalist Bree Dale is here. She's a correspondent living in Rome. And you can read her reporting in the National Catholic Register, LifeSite News, Newsmax, many other outlets. She's also a veteran naval surface warfare officer, and she's been covering the visit of President Biden in Rome that took place earlier today, meeting with Pope Francis. So we'll talk about that. We'll have the latest. Also trending is a little bit of what Cale Clark just talked about. That's the Facebook redesign announced by Mark Zuckerberg this week, and the rebranding that includes the name Meta, this new vision, heavily focused on in augmented reality. It's a social platform now that will integrate virtual reality, the metaverse, and that alone isn't new. And Cale just talked about both in terms of privacy, intrusion, and also kind of a strange virtual sacramental part and how that's completely untenable. But we're going to dive a little bit into, as Catholics, we value reason and logic and faith and thought. So we have to look at the transhumanism aspect of it. The word trans means beyond, and this is something Cardinal Sarah has warned about, that it merits study, the ethical, the moral implications of this technology on the human person. So that's something that we will explore this hour on Trending also. So the number is 888-914-9149, taking your calls this hour. And at the end of the show, we will turn our attention to the weekend, a very rich liturgical time as we begin Hallowtide, a 3-day celebration. We begin Sunday, which we remember the saints who came before us, where we draw near to this thin place. Brother Richard, an Irish monk friend who's been on my podcast several times, talks about that the Irish tradition of referring to November as the month of the poor souls, as the thin place, where we recall that they are just a whisper away, our beloved departed, and we pray for souls and all of the beautiful, rich traditions of our faith. In a Trappist monastery, the deceased is buried without a coffin. The monks leave the cemetery when the body is covered with the earth. That will be his last cloak while waiting for the resurrection. Before returning to the church, leaving behind them the body of their brother, the monks prostrate themselves and pray. The Trappists call the final gesture of prayer the prostration on their knuckles. So many rich traditions. And so we have the eve of All Hallows, followed by All Saints' Day, then All Souls' Day on November 2nd. So that is how we will conclude the show on that note, how we might enter into these days with an interior disposition that will allow us to orient ourselves to the graces that await us as we observe the month of poor souls in November. So that is our challenge. We have chosen to accept it. So let's jump right in with our guest today, joining us from Rome. She is a veteran naval surface warfare officer. She holds a Master's of Diplomacy from Norwich University, also a BA from Christendom College, and as an internationally accredited journalist, has published numerous articles on media content, public policy, the Catholic Church, and is also the international coordinator for Rosary Coast to Coast and the Holy League of Nations. Up late Rome time, thank you for staying up, is Bree Dale. Welcome to the show, Bree.
Good morning. How are you from Rome?
Yes, I know. Good morning. Is it 1 a.m. there in Rome?
It is, Brooke, but I've been up working late for Epoch Times. I am the Rome correspondent for Epoch, and I am reporting for Epoch on this really busy day. And I'm sure will be a big, busy weekend for us with the G20 here in Rome.
That's right. And I saw a candid photo of you today. You were in the press pool at the Vatican. So although you were there, you were with fellow reporters, you were there to cover the meeting between Pope Francis and President Biden, the access was restricted, right?
very restricted. And it was a surprise for us, for both the Vatican press as well as those accredited to the White House. Just kind of a background. 3 days ago, I logged onto my computer to see whether or not I had been approved for the press pool, watching President Biden, come in to the courtyard to meet a delegation from the Vatican. That is a common thing. And see if there were any other events that were attached to that, because the Vatican has been they've been hesitant to allow for those of us who are accredited to the Vatican our access to heads of state, which we were happy to provide to them in a way. When COVID hit last year, that privilege was suspended. And Brooke, because of COVID, and we didn't know the level of the contagion at the time, and the fact of the matter is, Pope Francis has one lung. It made sense for everyone to stay safe. That access to His Holiness and to heads of state be suspended at that time. But it's been over a year, and the press pool has been vaccinated and green passed and checked and double checked, and yet we have not had those rights given back to us. And that's a concern when you think that it's international press here, who are supposed to be covering situations like today. So when we saw that had not been established, the Vatican press pool submitted a formal letter stating that we were upset that we had yet to be able to cover such an important event as a Catholic president from the United States meeting Pope Francis. And then the White House joined and did the same. And that didn't make any waves, it seemed, because we had no access except for a photo pool today.
Right. And I did see there was an official release or dispatch from, there was at least one that I saw from today. So what do we know from that meeting?
So what we know is that what was spoken about, reportedly, coming from the Vatican, which kind of reflected what had been said by Jen Psaki was going to be discussed the day beforehand. And this is coming directly from the release from the Vatican press office. During the course of the cordial discussions, the parties focused on joint commitment to their protection and care of the planet, the healthcare situation and the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the theme of refugees and assistance to migrants. Reference was also made to the protection of human rights, including freedom and of religion and conscience. But what was not mentioned was abortion. And that was a question that was asked to the press pool in the White House the day prior from EWTN's correspondent there.
So, and that was confirmed. There was a follow-up story in which President Biden spoke to reporters after the meeting. And I know there was some effort to try to verify if that was fake news or what exactly was accurate, and which he had stated that Pope Francis had said he should, quote, keep receiving communion. Has that been verified by the Holy See? Where have you gotten with that?
Right. So this is where it gets really frustrating. Why we need to have independent access instead of Vatican state news only. I mean, you can imagine if we had this happen with any other, country in the world where a country said, "Oh no, we'll only have our state-run media cover this." There would be, such a public outcry. But for the Holy See, for whatever reason, they've been given a pass. And the reason why we need independent journalists is because the AP reported that Biden spoke to them after his meeting, and he said that the Pope said he was happy that he's a good Catholic and that he should keep receiving communion. Well, there's no way of being able to confirm that because no one was able to independently, record that or hear that. And so all we could do was go to the Holy See Press Office and say, could you please verify this? And they declined to comment.
Well, I
So,
also did see in the meantime, there's a push to pray, I think a petition as well for Pope Francis to please clarify this. And I'm not sure. It seems in the past that hasn't always happened. So I know that on the other hand, this is ahead of the USCCB's Fall General Assembly. And Cardinal Burke
yes.
just put out a statement last night talking about this, just with the General Assembly and discussing Canon 915. So that was interesting as well, just to see the body of our church, because our church has always been very heavy politically, I guess, in some sense, going all the way back. It's not
Very.
there's often, many landmines to try to navigate. So I guess in terms of that, the Cardinal Burke statement, anything additional to add there?
It's one of the things that and I've discussed this before with other bishops, in situations like this where there's not a lot of clarity, we have to look back and say, actually, there is. The church has not changed her stance on the dignity of the human person from conception to natural death. And it isn't something a pope can change. And I think that's really important for people to see. I was actually speaking about this to an evangelical the other day. And I actually repeated it to a friend of mine who is a journalist and also evangelical. We're blessed to not rely on a cult of personality or, have to center ourselves on an individual's identity, whether it's a pastor or a bishop or whatnot. We don't have to do that as Catholics, and we shouldn't. Even to the point of place no trust in princes, because man will fail, but God will never fail, and we know that the church has taught for 2,000 years this essential element of the dignity of the human person, and yeah.
It's just so interesting that you mentioned that, because I think it was Cardinal Gerhard Mueller. He had a statement that this was a while back, but he said, when there's tension between the Word of God and private expression of opinion, that the same principle always applies, and that's in dubio pro Deo. When in doubt, be in favor of God. The
Yes.
magisterium serves the Word of God and never stands above revelation. And so, yes, I think to underscore that and remember that is so important.
Yeah, and one of the things that as a journalist, I have to be as objective as possible when I'm reporting, and I don't like having one side. And I know that in the following days, we're going to see, I think, a lot of chaos coming from this statement from President Biden, because we don't have clarity. And I do hope that we will hear clarity from His Holiness, because he has been very clear about abortion from the beginning of his pontificate. And I think this may be the reason why the Holy See Press Office has said, we don't really have any statement, because he's been very clear about abortion. But then again, we have to pray that the Holy Father make himself very clear, because lives are at stake, and babies' lives are at stake, but also the lives of his spiritual children are under duress right now because of the oftentimes the kind of foggy nature of the politics behind a lot of what we see in the church.
Bree, do you have any sense that this may influence in any way the USCCB's, the General Assembly, and the application of Canon 19 in light of this meeting?
That's such a good question. I would hope not, because again, what might be said behind closed doors, what might be open to interpretation, especially from a politician it is in his best interest to, I would not say that as a spiritual sense, but politically, to have the Pope support him politically in this. It's such a messy thing, but the bishops have been very clear from the beginning that this is about the church teaching, and that they must make a stand on these things, because if they don't continue to clarify. And Brooke, I just have to say, this isn't a new topic. I recalled Cardinal Lorenzi visiting the United States decades ago was asked a similar question, and he came out and said, "Why are you asking me? Ask the child who's going through a catechism class for Holy Communion, First Holy Communion. That child can tell you the answer." So
Right.
this isn't something that is brain surgery here. This
Well, and
is
I think that's what's so difficult, where the
right.
faithful, the laity, are grappling with it's the painfulness and the spirit of accompaniment as a shepherd. That's such an important responsibility, to speak out of concern for the soul, to bring them back into the fold, to bring them
Right.
back to communion, and for our spiritual shepherds to call us, like Jesus, to go and sin no more, and to be concerned for the soul of the pro-abortion politicians. That's an
Yeah.
act of love. And so because it's a scandal when a pro-abortion politician will use their faith to get elected and then facilitate the slaughter of the child in the womb. And so I think that was the elephant in the room, where when you were talking about the statement that was released and what was discussed in human rights, that was omitted. And so
Mm.
it's helpful as we navigate this, just to try to know, I think, most of all, how to pray, because that was also how Cardinal Burke concluded his statement: is please pray for our country, the United States of America, and for our world and for our church. And that, I think, is always the most fundamental, primary mandate, call.
Right. And one of the things also, Brooke, that I want to emphasize is that, there, St. Peter, when he wrote his first letter, said, and I'm just paraphrasing, that we should always give an occasion for people to question the hope that is in us. And I find that oftentimes a lot of the news today has been very negative. And like I said, I try to report this as objectively as possible so that people just have the facts. But there's a lot of emotion involved, and of course, because we love our Eucharistic Lord and we love souls, and we want to see people receive our Eucharistic Lord in the state of grace, just like we endeavor to do so, and so and for their own benefit and for the benefit of others and their family. And so, but I would highly recommend for people to recall how devastating it is to see people use the faith for their political, means, and to also recognize that we should not ever take the time in liturgy to maybe make protests when we see something like this occur. We have to be very, very careful to lead by example through faith and hope and joy and charity, and correct our brothers in private. And that's a really important thing, I think, as well, Brooke, because a lot of people grapple with this, and it takes time, and our Lord is merciful.
Yes, praise be to God. And also, too, one note, because I do believe, just because as a family, as a body of Christ, that we can remember that we can discuss these things and still be faithful. And,
Yeah.
Frank Sheed, he was right in the middle in there with Chesterton and Belloc. And that was one of the things that he remarked. He kind of lamented in some ways that the intellectual community that he was a part of didn't always filter down to the laity as much. And so he said it's good to discuss these matters, obviously with charity and with a well-formed heart, but while still having that fidelity. And you can see that in the lives of the saints as well: St. Catherine of Siena, St. Hildegard of Bingen, and so many. So the importance of Catholics being able to grapple with these thorny, with these painful circumstances, yes, completely in charity, like you said, but also confronting it, because we do have, we can say, well, that they maybe they know more than me, and I'm wrong. But if we read the catechism, as you said, it's all there. The church is very clear about what she
Right.
teaches.
Right. And it's, again, is civil debate, civil discourse. We've lost some of that, possibly due to social media. And I know that we're going to be talking about the metaverse soon, but also because, COVID isolated us. And so people started to react, I found, on social media in emotional ways, and they and we've discussed this before, people who react in emotional ways, especially through things like this, tend to set themselves up for possibly overreaction and also possible manipulation. And that's one of the things that in the military we would tend to watch for what we would call psyops, is military or governments using or media, or even you can even see it in commercials and in movies, manipulating emotions in order to get some kind of reaction. And that's something that is, this is a hot topic for that. And so I think we have to maintain our cool and seek virtue off of this, and seek and pray, just like you said, Cardinal Burke called for the souls of those involved, because really at the end of the day, they will be the ones who have to stand before God and account for it.
That's right. And I saw that, and we, were a part of that, Archbishop Cordileone and the prayers for Nancy Pelosi. And we're just also wrapping up the 40 days for life. And so the ways that we can be active and be a witness, and also be on guard. The Lord has given us the grace of intellect, like you said, to be kind of aware of, because I know when you were on the show, the podcast with me before, we did talk about bots. And I know, again, as we get into the meta, that you think that just seems like a sci-fi thing, but there are really bots out there, whether it's Twitter or online, that are used for stirring up division and creating these polarizing conflicts.
Yes. And, it's like, what was civil debate before all of this? Sitting down and having the intellectual wherewithal to be able to put your point across without causing offense to the people that you are speaking to, i.e., without attacking them personally. When you start to see people doing that, attacking people personally, that tends to be the result of both being emotionally heated, but also for not having really a good leg to stand on intellectually. So I think we have the right on this when it comes to the dignity of the human person. So
that's right, and that is tough. We're working on virtues at home, and temperance is definitely one, and patience. But it is emotional when you feel hurt or betrayed, or all of the different, when there's a scandal. And so that's why I think, again, going back to the graces we receive from our sacraments, going to confession, and the peace that is instantly infused, and the humility, that all is so important in our formation. 888-914-9149 is the number to call. My name is Brooke Taylor, filling in for Timmery. My guest this hour is Bree Dale, a Catholic journalist currently living in Rome. And when we come back, we're going to transition into transhumanism. What is that, and why is it something that should concern you? We'll get into that next. More after the break.
Catholic Order of Foresters is proud to sponsor the Relevant Radio Studio line. For information about employment opportunities and flexible premium life insurance plans, visit relevantradio.com/forester.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Hello. It's Friday, and what a weekend, a rich weekend liturgically that we are entering into, also beginning a new month as we prepare, I can't believe it, to already enter the month of November. And a full show today. Bree Dale is with us. She is a Catholic journalist living in Rome. And I'm Brooke Taylor in for Timmery. 888-914-9149 is the number to call. Would like to hear from you. Another story that broke this week was the Facebook redesign announced by Mark Zuckerberg this week. And even if you have no interest in social media, even if you are not on Facebook, this is still interesting to consider. The rebranding includes a new name. It's called Meta. Maybe you heard about this. It's short for metaverse, where the physical and digital worlds come together. And I know last hour, Kel Clark touched on this as well. So the way the rollout looks and what Zuckerberg described, people are represented as avatars. They interact via a virtual reality. The name or the concept really isn't new. Actually, the name originated from Neil Stephenson. There was a science fiction writer in 1992, his novel Snow Crash, and we're also going to talk about a recent conference. But ready or not, here it comes. And there's a video circulating where Zuckerberg lays this out. And Lucas, can we have that clip ready? This is just a brief audio sample of the future of what he says Facebook Meta will be. Take a listen.
You'll get to decide when you want to be with other people, when you want to block someone from appearing in your space, or when you want to take a break and teleport to a private bubble to be alone. You're going to be able to bring things from the physical world into the metaverse. Almost any type of media that can be represented digitally, photos, videos, art, music, movies, books, games, you name it. And lots of things that are physical today, like screens, will just be able to be holograms in the future. You won't need a physical TV, it'll just be a $1 hologram from some high school kid halfway across the world. And you'll be able to take your items and project them into the physical world as holograms in augmented reality too.
Okay, ready or not, here it comes. So that's the video. Bree, I know you've been covering this story. Your initial thoughts, your takeaway.
So, for people who are listening, just so that you know, my background also includes IT project management and strategic communications, and I have at least 15 years in IT. So this is something that at face value is like, wow, super exciting. We're developing the future right now. Holograms, yes, they're here. AI, they're here. The metaverse has been around for a while, as you said, and that's not going away. So I think that has to be something that we're not stopping this, projection. And, short of having something like an ENT where we'd have like, an electromagnetic pulse that would come and stop all electronics, we're going to continue to see this progression. So I want to kind of back that up so that people understand it's here.
Right.
But wow, talk about identity crisis. and Brooke, why I say that, I was asked online, what does this mean? Why is transhumanism such a big deal to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and others? So first off, I want to kind of give people an understanding about what they gave over to Facebook when they created their Facebook page, so that you can understand that your Facebook page is going to become Meta. So your metaverse is starting to be developed by Facebook right now. And what you gave over was specific information. And then they started to collect that specific information, photos, things that you like. They started to take all of that algorithm, and then they started to develop a profile of you. And from that profile, they started to sell ads. And that's kind of, people are like, well, does Facebook watch what? Yes, Facebook watches what you do and what you like, and they even listen in on things like commercials or things that you talk about in order to be able to personalize ads, which you would look at and I've fallen for it too, and buy from. And about 98% of Facebook's revenue comes in through their ads. And I did an article this past year on how the Chinese have taken advantage of this, and there are stores online selling real human hair for wigs and extensions. And it came to find out that through investigation, and this was about 6 months worth of investigation, that this hair was actually from the Uyghur camps in China. This was sent over to the Senate. This was sent on to the floor of the House of the Parliament in the UK, and unfortunately, nothing has been done to penalize Facebook for making money off of genocide.
And that's just it. And there's so many different tributaries and avenues that we can go with this here.
Right.
But in arguing for this technology, some would say if you are severely disabled, those with ALS, for example, this is an aid. This is an aid to engage in the world. But of course, then you think of all the sin, the distorted, the perverted, the dangerous ways that it can be used. Pornography, for starters, and the human trafficking issue is at unprecedented levels right now. So I think that what's very scary and creepy is, like you said, they already have this data, and over years, most of us have been on for years.
Right. And so one of the things that I want people to just kind of, again, let's use our, our foundations of a Christocentric identity, and realize that the thing that is being created is neither bad nor good. It is just that. It is a thing that is neutral. It's how we use it, right? And with the metaverse, it is really opening an entire new life online. And yes, it can be very useful. But first, this is alternative lives that you can create online, having an avatar, creating this avatar any way you want it to look. So you're no longer looking at your face. And you can see this in the video that Zuckerberg put out, where you can make yourself look like a cat, or you can make yourself look like a monster. And I think this is something that I think we need to pay attention to, because with the identity crisis that we are seeing right now in the world, and pronouns and whatnot, I'm wondering if there's a connection there to young people spending a lot of time in the metaverse. It's already happening. Buying things, selling things, identifying in these ways, and living in this world. And it is a pretend world. But people are buying, they're trading, they're using Bitcoin, they're buying property that doesn't really exist, but in the metaverse it exists. And yeah.
Cardinal Sarah is such a prophet of our time, and he was asked, what worries you? And he said, transhumanism. And I just want to read a brief statement, because it's in his book. I'm holding the book, The Day Is Now Far Spent, which is very well loved and dog-eared. But I thought of this immediately. Transhumanism aims to create an eternal man. It is not a utopia that has the great advantage of not showing its true face. He says, transhumanism feeds into the mad plan to accelerate evolution by pushing back the limits of the human being and by creating new forms of life. The church does not have the right to be mediocre here. If she refuses to denounce the Promethean dreams of this era, she will fail seriously in her divine mission. If she proposes nothing to remedy the transhumanist excess, she will betray Christ. If she adapts to the spirit of the age, she will turn away from God. This is a considerable danger. What the utopias of the 20th century did not accomplish, the postmodern godless West will attempt to do. So that hits you right between the eyes.
Right. And, Encyclopedia Britannica actually defines transhumanism as a social and philosophical movement devoted to promoting the research and development of robust human enhancement technologies. That's really important for people to know. Transhumanism develops a robust human enhancement technology. Such technologies would augment or increase human sensory reception, emotive ability, or cognitive capacity, as well as radically improve human health, supposedly, and extend human lifespans, to the point where people who are following this philosophy, there are people already who are removing limbs in order to become more bionic. And so we're thinking of like RoboCop. We're thinking of, the Borg. This is where, or like even the Matrix. People have said, well, this whole like combination between transhumanism from Facebook and Meta and Metaverse is very much, it sounds like the Matrix. And I said, yeah, where we know that we're cutting into the stake and saying this, we know the stake does not exist. And yet I would rather live there and have all the sensory components of living in this pretend world. And that sense, the sensory components, like touching things in the metaverse, that doesn't exist, right? Though that's already there. That's artificial intelligence is already at that level. So, we know where that can go. And you mentioned pornography as one of the issues. Yeah. But what about the whole idea of the dignity of the human person? Where does that stand? If we are no longer, we're creating ourselves in this metaverse. If we're no longer looking at ourselves in the real world to our mission and the vision of God for us in the real world, and we're living our lives in this pretend world, there's a lot of issues that can be there. You can become your own God. in this.
Well, and I know that that's in beta stages because of trying to upload your conscience. And it's so difficult to even enter into the futuristic world without completely having shivers. But also, as you said, it's here. And so we must, as thinkers and as those with the keys really to truth, beauty, goodness, and the transcendentals, be able to work through this. And I know bioethics, I know many scholars are doing that, but I think
Right.
more on a general scale of people being aware of what this is. 888-914-9149 is the number to call. What are your thoughts? Are you on these platforms? Is that something that you would jump into? One of my questions is, how will people have the time? Because it seems very time consuming. And in one part of the video, he's talking about everyone is getting together. He's saying you can have a surprise party. You can take this technology wherever your imagination will go, and you're not limited by anything. If you want to see artwork on the street, it can be projected in like a hologram, and you can tip the artist and then you can see it longer. So people are making money. There's a currency, and that will feed into, of course, the vices and in vanity and pride and everything else. And that's just one little aspect of it. And one of the things that Cardinal Sarah says, because my question is, well, then when do I get off of this train? And where do we draw the line? And what Cardinal Sarah says, a people of immortal cyborgs will be mixed in with traditional human beings who are rather like the Amish. And so at some point, do you think that that's what will happen? I guess for me, I always believed it would be beyond my lifetime, but it's here.
It is, and it isn't. You know, one of the things that, and I want everybody who's listening out there, again, if you are an IT project manager or if you have experience in development, it'd be great to have people call in on this, because it's definitely here. And I am not an expert in all things when it comes to IT. There's so much to learn and AI, but I will tell you, I did speak to an expert this past week, Carlos Moreira, who is the founder of WiseKey, which is a cybersecurity firm out of Switzerland. One of the things that I found just fascinating out of all of this is that amidst all of these stories that are coming out, in the Vatican, there was a conference that was hosted by Moreira, and he was the keynote speaker for it. But there were lots of experts on this and very high-level businessmen, entrepreneurs who were attending, because there are a lot of people who are concerned about this. But you know what the biggest concern is, starting off before all of this even starts to take place, is the here and now of Facebook taking and owning our identities. And for Carlos Moreira, he said the code to doing this, the code is to turn over the keys back to the individuals who own their identities, to the point to say that we should have the switch from anything that has to do with our identity. And we should be able to, if Facebook thinks that they can make money off of our identity, we should have the ability to say, no, we don't want you to make money. Or actually, you have to pay me to be able to use and sell my identity to others, which they do for the use of their commercials. So he believes that with this human-centered technology that would allow us to have control over our identities, that is what's going to drive the metaverse to have to reshape itself to be human-centric, instead of focus on the development solely on the technology with no limitations. The limitation should be on the human dignity. And now was really difficult, Brooke, is that because he wrote this book called The Transhuman Code, and he co-authored it with David Ferguson. And he says, again, I'm not an expert on theology or philosophy. I'm an expert in the dev world. What ended up happening is, because of a flyer that was put up by one of the sponsoring organizations, this flyer was sent around especially conservative circles in the weeks prior to the conference, saying that this was a conference on transhumanism focused by the Vatican. And so the Vatican was buying into transhumanism. And with all of the bad news coming out of the Vatican, people just jumped on that and said, oh yeah, that's true, without actually digging in and looking into more about Carlos Moreira and his book and his fight against transhumanism. So it's really important to know that there are very high level people. Carlos Moreira has worked with the World Economic Forum. He has gone to Davos. He has gone and advised the UN, and all to go against transhumanism.
Bree, I know we're up against a break, but we have Danny from Central Coast, California on the line. Want to just hear what Danny has to say about transhumanism. Are you there, Danny?
Yes. Hi, Brooke and guest.
Hi
I was
there.
just considering all this talk about the promises and how things are going to get better with transhumanism, and I think it goes way back to the original temptation from the serpent in the Garden of Eden, saying you will be as gods. I have a better way. That's what this reminds me. When I hear those promises, what they're offering us. That's the bell that rings, in my head, So I just wanted to comment on that I don't trust this. It's going the wrong way. So.
Well, and I think that's wisdom, because we know that they have spent so much in looking at the habits of human beings, what causes us to be addictive, and it's called engineered consent, essentially engineered consent. And so I think it's so important, and that's the beauty of our faith, where we form our consciences. And it's interesting what you said, Danny, about the Garden of Eden, because what Cardinal Sarah asserts is that when you look at that through the incarnation, we are reminded that Christ teaches us the weight of happiness is not the negation of our creaturely state, but he came to take on our flesh. And so to accept our finitude, our finitude. And I think that that's important also, because as you said, Bree, it's this promise of you will live beyond, and you'll live beyond your limitations and how you look, which is of course why social media is so appealing and also so dangerous to, I think, our younger generation.
Yes, and I hope we will see a solution to this.
Absolutely. But I think what starts is the awareness, and like you said, to take back our privacy, and to do that. 888-914-9149 is the number to call. Bree Dale is with us today. My name is Brooke Taylor here on Trending. We'll be right back.
Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmery on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
So thankful to our guest, Bree Dale, a Catholic journalist living in Rome, for staying up late, almost 2 a.m. And what a trooper to talk a little bit about the meeting today with President Biden and Pope Francis, and also a story she covered this week, which is the new rebranding of Facebook, including the name Meta, short for metaverse. That's been around for a while, the metaverse idea, but leading us into the conversation of transhumanism, trans meaning beyond, and what does that mean, and the implications morally, theologically. And so Bree is back with us. We also have a phone call from Tom that I want to take, a robotics and automation guy from Frost Lake, Minnesota. Tom, I know you used augmented reality for many years before it was used socially. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I've been a robotics engineer. Turns out I'm actually a data scientist, right? That would be the term you apply today. But yeah, using augmented reality has been something we've done for quite a while, and really the idea of user interface, touch screens, all the things that everybody's used to now. We were using those and developing those 20 years ago, but you'd only see them in industrial workplaces and in high tech settings. So it would never have occurred to me to apply the machine learning algorithms and the AI things we were developing, because they weren't called those then. We were using these and developing these things, but it's only recently that I recognized that what I've done my whole life is actually develop these things. It's kind of a strange anomaly to feel that.
Yeah, and
so
it's really interesting. If I can just drop in really quick, when you say that, when you've developed like the robotics and whatnot. Yeah, this has been going on for nearly 20 years, and there's a lot of good that's involved with this. We see this also with like the Da Vinci machine that does surgeries. We are seeing this as a benefit, but it can very easily be twisted to be a detriment to human beings. Sorry, Brooke.
No, I just agree. And I also think, Tom, from your perspective, what an interesting insight that you have to offer. I mean, what is your sense and I guess your wisdom having come from that side of it, how we process this?
It's interesting to me because the development of the ability to process data has gotten just so much faster. So the idea of using neural networks, I mean, we struggled 15 years ago to develop those, and it's the same, fundamentally the same. It's just the struggles were so much harder. So things are so much easier to do now, but pushing it to the social level where your goal would be to create an alternate reality void of the hardships of life, what an empty existence. What a horrible existence. I mean, that is the Matrix. And it scares me because I can't even imagine that somebody would misapply this type of technology and, just divert it into such a horrible thing. I mean, I'm looking at the things I've developed and it's scary. It's like, wow, if these technologies are misapplied, they could be really bad.
It's so often when you look back at the inventions, how those that initially helped create it, they could never see where it would go. I remember even looking at a documentary of the man who created shopping malls, and he had kind of regretted it at the end. But also you hear that with airplanes and just then the destruction of, wars through that and just different things. And there's all sorts of deep dives that you could do into that. But I also think the beauty is, like you said, people now have never been more unhappy with all of these synthetic technologies that we have. So what a beautiful opportunity for us who have found our Lord and the way, the truth, the beauty of the gospel, the incredible, profound radiance of the sacraments, that we are able, if we're on fire, that fire will catch. That really no amount of money or studying or artificial intelligence can penetrate that. And I think that that's an important reminder that we're not just helpless spectators in this, but through the beauty of our own lives and clinging to Christ and his church, that we can shine that radiance in that truth. And you see that in the monks, that the world, when they encounter them, like a Mother Teresa, are instantly transformed just by the witness of watching them. So I think that that's another important reminder that should give us hope. We only have a few minutes left. Go ahead, Bree.
I wanted just to jump in also to say that when I spoke with Carlos Moreira and one of the founders of Apple right at the beginning of the day, who was also at this conference, one of the things that they both said was, we aren't experts in the field of theology, philosophy, ethics, where, the church has been for 2,000 years. And so they came to the Vatican to ask the Vatican to help inform them and engage in order to be able to more rightly inform those who are pushing this out, to try to refocus on the dignity of the human person, again, because this could be technology that is for the good of mankind, and they have a great hope for that. And one of the things that I asked the expert, Father Larry, here in the Vatican, who has been working on robotics and AI for quite some time, is that I said, if we cannot get back to the foundations of our identity in Christ, which makes us whole, there's no way that we can inform this dignity of the human person. It's not going to stand. And he conferred, and I actually said I need to do an interview directly with this, because I think this is something that Dav guys like you, this is not what you've been thinking about, right? And now you have this weight on your shoulders, feeling like, oh my goodness, I have been part of creating this monster. Well, it's not a monster. It's opportunity, and it's not something to be, it's something to be concerned about because of the abuse, but it's something to inform and hopefully use as a tool for good.
That's right. We just have about 2 minutes. Lucas just said, I've heard more and more businesses and tech companies are seeking ethics mentors for help. So I think that that's something to continue to pray about. And like you said, too, virtue, to be well formed. And just want to thank you so much for staying up, Bree, for joining us to talk about these topics. And every day you cover breaking stories, in-depth human interest pieces as it relates to the church and faith. How can we follow your work?
So I ask people to follow me on Twitter. It is at Bree A. Dale, Dail. I'm also on Facebook, but you will find me on Epoch Times. And I just have to do a shout out. I am doing a big report for Newsmax magazine as well, coming out in December. So all of these outlets that are really supporting the need to look at the truth and look at it objectively, I ask that you support them as well. And it's all for a good cause for me. So thank you very much for following me, and please share that out.
Thank you so much. God bless you, and thank you for your work. Thank you for joining me. My name is Brooke Taylor, and just a reminder, please pray for Timmery, for their family, as she is with her mom, sick right now, and so I'm filling in on trending, but just entrust her to our Lord, the Sacred Heart, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and for you to have a blessed weekend and enter into this Hallowtide. I love the quote from Nicholas Daya, Time to Die, and he writes, "Our existence must be a novitiate for eternity. There is no hologram or augmented world that can touch the truth, beauty, and goodness of our faith and what we were meant to." As St. Stanislaw Kostka said, who died at 17, "I want eternity. I was born for greater things than long years." God bless you until next time. Have a great weekend.